let's focus on how do we grow together? How do we focus and refocus ourselves in a more purposeful way? So our common ground tonight is the Earth Care, People Care, Fair Share. Now, as I interview these people, my hope is that you find that they are different than you, that their focus is gonna have a little bit of a different take, it's gonna have a little bit of a different bend, and that is okay. That is okay that they are where they are today at that point in their journey. And I don't know about you, but I have not arrived in my journey yet. I am still learning, I'm still growing, I'm still weak, immature, I still have blow-ups. That's okay, none of us have arrived. So how do we continue to connect and find this good common ground and learn and grow from one another? So the first tenet that we're gonna jump into is people care. So I first got connected, and I'll say connected because it was kind of over social media, and you guys can come up and you guys take the kind of spotlight over here. I got connected with Nilani, and were you guys married at the time? Were you? Okay, so just married. Yeah. So I was teaching in Kansas City, Missouri at a school called the Daniel Academy, and they were just beginning their journey as a private school in integrating permaculture and regenerative homesteading into the education world. And so what I think is so unique about what Derek and Nilani are doing and have done is they're caring, when I say for people, I'm talking about people and everything in between, in a way that is equipping them in their minds, that's teaching them about the land, about plants, about animals, but also teaching them at a heart level, helping families walk out good conversations and as a school challenging conversations, probably more often than we like, you know, and that's a difficult journey, but the garden has become for them a safe place for their family, but also a safe place to invite others into along the way.
And I wanted to start with what we call in our classrooms an activator. So this is just to get you guys involved in this thinking and representing what people care means to you. And I have some loose parts. These are just different materials that our community has brought in, our families have brought in. I've gotten from Shanti, from her bamboo. And so all these different materials that we've collected as a community that help us to represent our thoughts and ideas. If you'd like to come up and grab a few pieces, and you're welcome to them.
Everybody has to come up. Everybody's got to grab at least one thing.
Well, if you don't feel as comfortable, which maybe you're more like me, you enjoy using your words more than necessarily doing that, feel free. If you say, I don't, this isn't really, I don't know how to describe it, what I'd like you to do is go back to what really we were talking about at the first, Chris, when we were saying, what does it mean to you? What does people care mean to you? So now that you've had a little bit to think about it, as you're describing that with the loose parts, if you know what people care means to you, go find someone. This is easy. If you don't know the person next to you, you can turn to them. If you do know the person next to you, can't talk to them. If you're married, you're blessed for a moment. So what I want you to do, find someone that you don't know. Either share what you're doing with the loose parts or share what people care means to you. We'll give you about 2 minutes to do that. Either do the provocation, the advocator, or share what people care means to you and how you are living it now. We'll give you about 2 minutes to do that. All right, we'll get you back together real quick. Don't worry, you'll have more time to do people care and do that in a little bit. So, Nilani, do you want to share what people care means to you?
Sure. I was enjoying hearing so many of your conversations of you attaching meaning to these little loose part pieces and hearing the way there's so many different interpretations of people care. And I think that is the beauty of us, that we can see it through this permaculture lens, but it looks very different to all of us, to each of us. And I think that's beautiful. I have this piece here that seems to me like a foundation piece. And when I think about layering, I think of that people care as having that foundation for people to stand on and being connected. And so I've got a couple rings of bamboo on top of it that are all interconnected with 4 pieces in the middle that represent the 4 in my family. So that interconnectedness that connects us to everything else. That was how I represented it.
So the challenge that we have is how do you represent people care to a society and to a culture who really doesn't care about people? If you look at one of the great things you were talking about was COVID was really not necessarily a changing event, it was a revealing event for America. And what happened during there is there's two phenomena that we focus on at the school of how do we deal with this. How do you develop students who are able to go out? We believe that everything was created in a garden. If God created and formed us in a garden, we should probably get the kids back out into a garden. And if the perfectness of life was created us to be back, have our hands deep in the soil, to have our hearts connected, and to have our minds at peace with God, how do we do that where it's very difficult? When I grew up, I won't tell you how old I am. When I grew up, we didn't have phones. I grew up in a small town in Michigan. Nalani grew up on Kauai. Very different settings. Places where you didn't worry about distractions. My parents would say, go out and play. And I had the St. Joe River out our house. And we'd go out to the back and we'd play for hours and come back in at 10 o'clock at night. Responsibility was much higher. The ability to take care of yourself, the ability to be a steward in the land was very high. Today, our smartphones dictate for our children their lives. The anxiety levels now in teenagers in America are higher than they were in the 1950s in psychiatric patients. It is an immense challenge that we face. And so when we had this purpose and vision to be able to create a school that would do things in the way that we believe God called them to be done, in a way that brought us back to Him and built that life. And we started this journey not because we are the ones, we might be talking about it, we're just the ones talking about it. It was a group of people who came together because we happened to meet at Advent Health Celebration as a church. And they said they needed a mission-based early childcare, and because their employees needed a place to send their kids. And so from that vision of how do you better care for your employees, what can you do, we said, don't worry, we think we know what we can do. We can start a school. I worked in technology. Nalani was in music theater. What do we know about school? Nothing. I went to school. That's about it. And so you say, what do you do? And so we went back to the basics and the principles, what we call creation life. And creation life is 8 principles: choice, rest, environment, activity, trust in God, interpersonal relationships, outlook, and nutrition. Or permaculture principles. The ability to be able to live a full life. And in fact, it is the only lifestyle known around the world that will, no matter where you live, extend your life if you live this by 10 plus years. If you're familiar with the National Geographic study, if you're familiar with the Adventist Health study, it's the longest longitudinal study ever done by the NIH. 40 years long, 80,000 members. Proved people in North America that live this lifestyle live 10 to 12 years different. And the difference is based on whether you're pescatarian, vegan, or if you're actually a meat eater. And the funny thing is the pescatarians live the longest, but just whatever your style is from there. So one of the hard things that you have to do is how do we pass it along and how do we actually rewire the brains of our children? Because if we are now set in a time when everyone is on their phone and we don't know how to have a conversation, how do we go about changing that culture to where we can talk with each other? And I'm feeling my wife that she wants to interject right now because we've been married that long that I get that connection. So I'm going to step back and turn it over to her for a little bit and talk about some of the ways that we build those connections with the kids.
So I think going back to what Chris was saying about how there's a coming to the water, there's a coming to the well. Where we're located in Celebration is right next to Disney. And so the need that we were meeting for the hospital was because the community that we were looking at serving were people who were coming from all over to this melting pot and separating from their larger families and needing a village. And so creating that village, that place in Celebration where we could all come together and grow together and provide that sense of family and that sense of belonging was part of our early mission. And from there, 10 years ago, we grew from a group of 50 students and 12 teachers to this year we have 400 students and 60 teachers. And it is such a gift and such a blessing. But it poses its own challenges as we continue to go along in society and all these different things like technology. And as we age up, so we started with our little ones, our infants, we had 6-week-olds, all the way up to age 4. And every year we've grown, so now we have 10th graders. We're going into 16-year-olds in high school. And just seeing that progression and the stages of development for these students and what they face and the challenges that they face, and understanding more and more that what they're dealing with is not stress and anxiety. It's meaninglessness. So understanding how to get these students to understand that they add value when they understand that they're part of something much larger than just themselves.
And real quick, just to finish up, the great way of what you're doing is it teaches kids a way that they can have that value and worth. A study done out of Harvard 5 years ago showed that the number one way that you can drive worth in teenagers is through chores. So one of the things that we think about is how do we change children? You change them by giving them worth, knowing they were created by God, made in his image to love him and love others. You give them the worth of getting them out and working. And then you give them a purpose to go out and help others and love them. It's a challenge, it's difficult, but one of the best things is you can look at a rock in many different ways. I did not like permaculture till a couple months ago.
I tell you.
My wife is a permaculturalist. You might look at me and realize I'm not. I like walking around the garden. I don't like necessarily
Opposites
working
attract,
in it.
right?
Yeah, opposites attract. What I did find out, though, I enjoyed growing up around Disney because I like manicured things. A lawn, my plants, everything needs to look manicured.
Wait, you're saying permaculture is not real manicure? I'm just kidding.
We'll discuss the front of our school in just a little bit. I struggle with that still to this day. But what I found in permaculture is a worth that you can give the students when you're not trying to create a product, but when you're trying to create a connection. Mm-hmm. And that is people care. It is not telling someone else that they are wrong. Yeah. It is understanding where they are coming from and the ability to understand how they are just as right as you are. It's a challenge, it's hard, but it's ultimately what we believe is love, what we struggle with in our marriage, with our children, and with each other. And that's why I've turned to loving permaculture, because we all have weeds, and sometimes it's better not to hide them.
Some of us more than others. Good thing those weeds are edible.
And that's what I think really we teach our kids.
Yeah.
We don't have to live a perfect life. Mm-hmm. What you have to live is an authentic life. And you have to live a life that you can sustain and give back to others. And so that's our struggle. And we can tell you all the stuff we did wrong, and we love to hear all the stuff that you do right. So thank you for giving us the time, Chris, and thanks for allowing us to come out.
Hang out for a minute. I want to just give them a couple of questions, because I think practically, most of us have probably been to Disney, so we know the Disney Celebration, Kissimmee area. And there are people from all walks of life. I mean, every background and flavor and smell that you can possibly imagine. So you guys probably have quite the melting pot at the school, especially being a world school where you have different cultures blending and worldviews. Now let's bring that back to the garden. So you get a classroom in the garden. How in the world do you even start looking at teaching math or science or these other things? How in the world are you using the garden to do that? Like, that just seems so overwhelming, I think, to a lot of us.
Sure. So our approach to education is transdisciplinary.
Okay.
So what we're doing in the garden is lifelong learning, and doing it conceptually, not necessarily through a specific discipline, allows them to make those connections on their own and allows them to be the agents of their own learning. And then the beautiful things that come out of that, when you see them making those connections, it is really incredible. For example, our students were talking about, we have a whole unit at the end of the year called Sharing the Planet. And so we explore what does connection look like in relation to sharing the planet? What does responsibility look like in connection to sharing the planet? And so when you start asking these questions and getting these students to think about it, the students started talking about food waste. And so they started tracking their food waste and making charts and graphs of their daily food waste. And then the students started asking more questions of realizing the data of how much food waste just their class was making, and then calculating that data across the entire school and going, whoa, we have a problem. And then they're coming up with the solutions for that problem. They're the ones now, the kids are coming up with the solutions for those problems. They're writing their own speeches so that they can pitch their ideas to get the other classes involved. And then we have, all of a sudden, all kindergarten through 5th grade composting.
I'm voting
at
for
the end of
them
the
in the
year.
next election. I've already decided. That's amazing. Now, I do want to ask you, like, what is your favorite thing to do when you go out in the food forest and around the school? What is your favorite thing to do? I'll give you my fuzzy.
I think maybe just to look at the plants and see. Yesterday, I was just a little tiny seed. But today, I've grown so much and I know so much today. And thinking that today is the last day of school and it's summer and I'm going into 4th grade. And then after that, I'll be going into 5th grade. It's just I was a little tiny seed and now I'm a big plant now. So I like just going in the garden and seeing all our plants and looking at how far they've gone and how far we've gone and seeing the fruit on them.
I have 2 more questions for you, because I heard enough from Mom and Dad. So first question is, who is your favorite chicken and why?
Probably Pip, because whenever you want to pick him up, he's just like, sure, pick me up. And I also like him because he is white, and I don't really like brown chickens. I wouldn't say I hate them because I don't hate them. And I wouldn't say I don't really like them because I don't really like them. But it's not like I hate them.
Yeah. The white ones are pretty. They're
Yeah.
very pretty. And Pip has a great personality. How old is Pip now?
I think
5?
he's,
Wow.
yeah, he's 5 or 6
He'll be
That's
turning
awesome.
6 this
this
November.
year. And I also like that he's a rooster because randomly I just go into the garden and he's like, cock-a-doodle-doo, and I'm like, oh, it's morning time.
Totally. That's awesome. Now I have two more questions. Can I do 2 more?
Yeah.
What's your favorite food in the food forest?
I would say maybe, I don't really
I know your sister's is the katuk. I'm already
Yes.
aware of the katuk.
Yes.
But what is yours?
Maybe avocado or mango.
Nice. Okay, and then my last question is, you got to tell everybody about the mango recipe. The one that you just shared with your mom.
Which one? Oh, the mango chia. Yes. So we got these chia seeds from the grocery store, and then we put some yogurt in them, and we have our own mango tree actually at our school, and a few just fell a few days ago, and we just used them on top, and then we got blueberries and some other stuff and blended them and made a little jelly-ish soup thing, and then we made them into this very nice juice.
I love it. I love it. That is perfect. And I mean, honestly, I love that when kids get excited about food, and it's more than just chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese, but like real food. Since when have you heard a kid talk about chia seeds and mango and yogurt and be real excited? Like, this is incredible. But when you grow it, when you're connected to it, when you're interacting with it every day, when it's growing in your playground, which it literally is, and you can reach up and grab bananas and mangoes and avocados, the kids fall in love with it. It becomes a natural part of their rhythm to care for their body. But at the same time, I think that translates over as well into caring for their mental well-being, as well. And that's something that obviously running a school, the mental health of kids and emotional health is a really real factor. Now, is there a way to navigate that connection between their mental and emotional stability and health and their garden life? And if so, how have you seen that work at Creation Village?
So I think about it whenever we have challenging times in the classroom, when emotions get high or there's an overstimulation, the natural pull is to go outside. The teachers say, whoa, something's not right here. We got to go outside. It's just natural within us. When something doesn't feel right, we take it to the garden. We take it outside. We need some fresh air. We need some sunlight. We need some water. We need to touch a plant. We need to see green.
Does it work? Does it really work?
It works.
Does it?
It
Okay.
works. You let the children come outside and there's a sense of calm. You listen to the sounds of nature and it's at that same rhythm that brings all the buzzing down. It calms you. Absolutely.
It's so interesting. I remember listening to Shanti a couple years ago, and you were doing this talk, and it might have even just been on social media talking about the bamboo forest and how, in Japanese culture, they go through and do forest bathing, and, it helps lower stress and cortisol levels. And at first, when I first heard about this, it was from a friend of mine who is a Navajo Native American. And I was like, oh, that's neat woo-woo science of, bamboo calming me down and all the weird, jujubes and vibes. But then when you start looking at the science, is it myrcene? Is that the one that when the bamboo leaves blow in the wind, these little droplets of myrcene, a terpene, falls on the skin, and it has very similar relaxant properties to what we would have with lavender or chamomile. So there's actual science behind this bamboo and forest bathing of not only does it look pretty, and it does, not only does it sound pretty because it sounds incredible to be in a bamboo forest, but there's science behind the little droplets of myrcene falling on the skin and absorbing. So getting kids out in the garden, what an interesting take on therapy without having to be the licensed counselor,
Well, I think one of the ways, real quick, so if you're interested in research, the Berkeley Center for Greater Good does incredible research on the outdoors. And so just getting children outside, you will see a 17-point increase in their national standard testing scores in reading by just being outdoors for 30 more minutes a day than the average American student. So part of it is, if you look at holistically getting children to have a well-rounded life, getting them outside, getting them active in what they're doing, and giving them free play. There's a great book called The Anxious Generation, The Rewiring of American Children by Jonathan Haidt. Fantastic professor. If you pick it up, it talks about really the need for free play, which is provided in the outdoors, the need for rest, and the need for getting children reset so they can be able to learn. So it is not only powerful in just resetting their mind in the moment, but it's powerful in the long-term impacts of their learning, their development, and then being able to sustain them, especially through the middle years of their lives when they're going through puberty and relearning life. And so Greater Good is a fantastic resource for actual ways that Berkeley has found that nature and holistic approaches brings value, not only in our national standard testing, but in ways that you see a difference in children's lives every day.
Thank you guys so much.